This week, we speak with John Chirhart from Google Cloud about stopping bots and stopping the reliance on identifying stop signs to do so. Today is a double feature picture show. In our second segment, we'll speak with Catherine Chambers from Ardetto about hardening mobile endpoints so that security doesn't have to end when apps go mobile. We're live streaming it in our Discord channel. Come say hi and stay tuned for Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production. It's the show to learn the latest tools, techniques, and processes necessary to understand DevOps, application security, and cloud security. Your trusted source for the latest application security news. It's time for Application Security Weekly. By connecting to your code repository, Accurix generates a topology across your full stack to reveal risks so that you can harden your architecture. It also scans code for violations against compliance and security standards to enforce best practices. In addition, Accurix develops threat models using vulnerability feeds, IAM privileges, and other data to predict potential breach paths. Learn how easy it is to get started with Accurix at securityweekly.com/Accurix. As the world of software-driven everything becomes a reality and development cycles speed up, sales teams are taking a new approach to application security, one that enables security teams to scale by empowering developers to integrate security into their development workflows and toolsets, all while giving security teams the visibility and control they need. Snyk helps software-driven businesses develop fast and stay secure with a developer-first solution that seamlessly and proactively finds and fixes vulnerabilities in open-source libraries and containers. Learn more and see the solution for yourself at securityweekly.com/Snyk. Discover a simple way to secure your app without the need for a full security team. With trusted software, simply drag and drop your app and get it back fully protected within a couple of minutes. Trusted software is the smartest zero-touch app protection solution on the market. Change the world one app at a time. With 50 years of security expertise, Ardetto's software security technology and cyber services protect over 5 billion devices and applications for some of the world's best-known brands. To request a demo, visit securityweekly.com/Ardetto.
Welcome to Application Security Weekly. This is episode 109, recorded June 1st, 2020. I'm your host, Mike Shima. I'm here with Matt Alderman. Hello, Matt.
Good morning, afternoon, can't remember.
Can't remember. It's one of those things. We also have John Kinsella. Hello, John.
Hey, it's still morning here.
Still morning. Oh, and John representing the red shirts. We'll be careful if we send you away on an away team. Hopefully, we'll stay tuned. Let's see if he survives the episode. Learn how hidden vulnerabilities lead to application compromise in our next webcast with Snyk. Our second June webcast will be with Google Cloud, teaching you how to prevent account takeover attacks. Register for our upcoming webcasts or virtual trainings by visiting securityweekly.com/webcasts or visit securityweekly.com/on-demand to view our previously recorded webcasts. Join the Security Weekly mailing list and receive your invite to our community Discord server or by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe and clicking the button to join the list. John is an engineer in Google Cloud Security's user protection services. He specializes in developing capabilities and solutions to detect and mitigate automated attacks against web applications and infrastructure. John first joined Google as part of Chronicle, a Google Moonshot Factory graduate. He's an information security and compliance veteran with 18 plus years of experience. Hello, John. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us today.
Well, you've got 18 years of experience in security and compliance. So you've been around, you've seen bots for quite a while. You've seen different types of automation. And in fact, I believe you're working on 2 products in this space. So let's talk about, what are the attacks that you're seeing today? And equally importantly, as I kind of alluded to in the opening of the episode, is how are we doing this, or how are you doing this in a way that doesn't introduce too much friction for users, between users and their web app?
Yeah, actually, so the User Protection Services team, or UPS, is a division within Google Cloud Security, and we specialize, like we said, in the anti-fraud space, specifically around 2 core technologies. One is reCAPTCHA, and the other is our WebRisk API product. WebRisk is the newest version in the family of the Google Safe Browsing API, and reCAPTCHA is a longtime veteran of the bot wars, if you will, with over 4 million websites deployed globally and in existence for well over a decade. So the UPS team was recently stood up as part of the Google Cloud Security family in order to help advance these products. These products were things that Google had actually been providing for many, many years to the community, but there was a need to keep up with a faster development pace. We were seeing that the bots were evolving faster than the traditional methodologies to defeat them, and so this really was something that we realized that needed us to really focus on it and develop further. So what we did was in January of this year, we stood up the UPS team based in Durham, North Carolina, and along with our other development teams throughout the world, to really kind of build a center of excellence around these automated attacks and figuring out how to stay, leaps and bounds ahead of the bot makers, since it seems like it's becoming a very, very interesting cottage industry. Specifically with the uptick in credential stuffing attacks, which I think has been plaguing quite a bit of the users these days.
Absolutely. And credential stuffing, one of the other immediate responses to credential stuffing is try to get that adoption of 2FA. But I think even Google a couple months ago, their report was that 2FA is great for preventing account takeover, but the adoption rate is in paltry, I think, single-digit percentages. So that's a tough thing. So clearly, that's an area that web applications still need defenses in. But even credential stuffing isn't the only type of modern attack against web applications. So if I'm a web application owner, I need to care about more than just the login page, don't I?
Absolutely, and that brings up a good point to your earlier comment about user friction. So ultimately, what we want to do is we want to find out, the whole concept of a CAPTCHA is a completely automated test to tell humans and computers apart. So what we want to do is be that authoritative source when it comes to determining whether the likelihood of a bot or not. The way we do that is finding a sweet spot between user friction and bot friction, and you got to really finely tune that. Typically speaking, there's two schools of thought: set it and forget it, or actually tune it. And the site administrators and the application owners that are sitting there and tuning their technology based on the use case are the ones that have the ultimate advantage at both defeating the bots and also not defeating sales. In a recent case, we saw a 70% decline in transaction conversions with one particular organization because they developed their own CAPTCHA technology. And when they implemented it, it was so difficult to use that their users just were unable to conduct their business. So finding that friction sweet spot to keep the bots at bay and then also enabling commerce is something that we're really keen and focused on. The original versions of CAPTCHA were effective. Initially they were able to challenge the bots in a way that was mechanical in nature. And so what we basically did is we assumed that everybody was a bot, and you were a bot until proven not, if you will. And so over time, though, as the bots continued to evolve and they, just kept getting tested, and we even saw technologies like actual widget or CAPTCHA defeat programs out there. There's even browser extensions now that can do a lot of that under the guise of ADA compliance or assistance and stuff like that. So the mechanical widget is still probably one of the most popular methods. We're best known for I am not a robot, or maybe as also known as the click the sidewalks or click the crosswalks, click the stop signs, and all that other stuff. But as we saw, the bots evolved, and then user friction also skyrocketed as a result. So we needed to come back and kind of reapproach things. And so over the evolution, which we're now in the fourth generation of reCAPTCHA with the launch of reCAPTCHA Enterprise, we've seen where it's not just one single thing that solves it. And 2FA alone is not going to solve this either, especially with the adoption rate. Literally, we started off with OCR, malformed characters. We went over to the mechanical widgets and selections using images. And in version 3 of reCAPTCHA, we went over to invisible reCAPTCHA, where you may not even realize that you're being, assessed as a bot in that case, and unless you saw the privacy banner at the bottom of the screen there. And that was a big shift for us. So we went from a mechanical methodology to a machine learning methodology. And then from there, we started looking at new forms of friction introduction. And as you said, 2FA is a really big and popular one right now, especially with the proliferation of cell phones. It's a lot easier to get an SMS message or even an email and very quickly respond to that. We're also seeing tokenization as another one as well. There's been a lot of interesting integrations on that, but 2FA alone has issues now. We're seeing smishing attacks on the rise. So smishing is negating some of the stuff. So we really have to continue to evolve both the detection capabilities and also the challenge capabilities, and that's something that the UPS team is been working on diligently. Additionally, we also have to enrich that data and provide it, because just because we do an assessment of a session and make a determination score, there's other factors that could potentially be brought in to enrich the overall security posture of an application and the enterprise as a whole. We often see reconnaissance attacks, if you will, or even an uptick in traffic prior to a major bot event as well. So taking that, aggregating both the reCAPTCHA data and other data sets or other security telemetry into like a SIM or a next-gen SIM like Chronicle has really helped not just the application security folks, but ultimately the entire security team as a whole. So.
Yeah, and you're describing a lot there too, is that, applying the machine learning and looking at much more longitudinal data, if you will, about watching that uptick in activity before the the botnet attacks or the bot attacks even begin. But it also sounded like, I think, one of the reasons you're talking about you and your team, this evolution, is that the attackers are also applying their own machine learning against that mechanical form of reCAPTCHA. And it sounded like that's one of the reasons that's pushing you into having this cat and mouse, for lack of a better cliche, that type of fight. But I also imagine, in addition to these bot herders that are doing this with malicious bots, there's also got to be some good bots out there, perhaps, that you're also watching and responding to, perhaps in a different way. Is that so?
Absolutely, and the concept of good bots just kind of blew my mind the first time that I actually heard it. I was like, wait, there's actually good bots out there, and I mean, I knew there were, but every day I get introduced to a new use case of the product. We've seen bots used for scraping tracking numbers for parcels, where there are companies that are literally built legitimate business out there scraping and basically guessing, enumerating package tracking numbers, and then bringing that into their own database so that they can combine multiple shippers under one single website. And that's actually a legitimate business. Now, that has a drastic impact, not necessarily from a security perspective for the post office or the package shipper, but that's a huge IT resource. And so there's now, using that type of data, the parcel companies are starting to open up APIs to these third parties because they realize that there's a need and a demand. So it's not just purely a malicious intent in there. Other things too, we've seen where governments will open up pending legislation for public comment as well. And so public comment can be in the form of citizen to government or lobby group to government. And so what we're finding is that organizations in that case would like to actually be able to differentiate bot traffic from actual human traffic, so that they can properly account for the weighting of what is a major blast versus another. And then also another aspect of it is, by using machine learning, we can we can go ahead and tune the models effectively to look for what is a good bot and what is a bad bot. We found that there's a lot of instances where using various CAPTCHA technologies, the bot makers actually will try and train and test their bot scripts against other various CAPTCHA technologies. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the machine learning models that we have stay ahead. And so as we start to see signs of bots that potentially are circumventing the current methodologies, the machine learning models are able to know the difference between a good bot and a bad bot. This helps the models stay tuned to that site, very site-specific traffic, and refine themselves. So static analysis is something that does not work in this case, because it's just a matter of finding the 10th or the 11th thing on a 10-point checklist, and then once you got that, you're past it. So again, it's all about running the models in a manner that they continue to get the best granularity of data, and then ultimately keep refining that. That then has to be met in terms with a plausible friction methodology that does not inhibit the user experience as well. So it's a very fine, delicate balance. I really liken this more to a almost like you would see in a database. You have the database administrator, and then you have the database users, and then you have all the there's a fine tuning process that goes into every database to make sure that it's running efficiently, that the data is structured and all that. And that's really what we're starting to see a lot of these CAPTCHA Technologies develop is to a very robust security database based on characteristics and interactions with the sites. It's imperative that people understand that, we don't know if it's a user or not. So, given the privacy laws and everything like that, we actually look at session interaction. So we actually don't track that in that aspect, and we look at it from a session level because it may not be a user. So understanding those characteristics and developing those models to your specific site and your site alone is really important to staying ahead of the curve.
Now, John,
so
when most people talk about machine learning, right? There's like, there's another machine learning algorithm. But in the case of Google, I'm pretty sure you guys have enough data points to actually do some very interesting modeling. Can you talk about some of the models and some of the data that you're pulling to help determine, is this a bot? Is this a user? Is it a good bot? Is it a bad bot? Kind of help us through some of that.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting to me is how closely guarded and protected the machine learning models are at Google. We have, in my opinion, the best in the industry when it comes to security and protection and even the maintenance of our machine learning models. Specifically in the case of CAPTCHA, our models are tuned to the specific individual site. That being said, there are models that the models are based off things that we internally use. So Google has 9 products with over 1 billion active monthly users. In fact, I believe one of those 9, which is the G Suite, has been publicly certified to over 2 billion monthly users. That being said, that's part of the reason why we got into reCAPTCHA was in order to protect our own infrastructure, and that's why we purchased reCAPTCHA in 2009. We needed the technology. Google has a very proud heritage of dog fooding, where we eat our own dog food and we use our own technology. And so what we've done is with the release of reCAPTCHA Enterprise, we've taken all those lessons learned and built out this amazing capability within reCAPTCHA Enterprise from those over 10 years of experience working with these data models and tune them, and then now give you the ability to tune them specifically to your site. And so, yes, we definitely know a thing or two about machine learning, and we're bringing that really powerful capability that lets us know the best time to go to a restaurant or a bank. And we're taking that same technology, that same engine, and then putting it to you. In terms of what we look for, we probably get the number one question we get is, what specifically do you look for? And the answer is, I don't know, and I couldn't tell you if I did. And the reason for that is there's not one person on my team that actually knows every specific rule, every specific algorithm to the machine learning models. There's not one person, and the reason for that is we want to protect the sanctity of the data models and what it is that we guard. Our development teams are broken up for that specific reason, and so there's not one person that has the keys to the castle. And so it's really important that we don't publicly disclose the specifics of all of that information, because we don't want the bot makers to just build a better mousetrap. To us, in many ways, this is kind of like if those of you who grew up watching or reading Mad TV with Alfie and all that. This is very spy versus spy in that sense, and so we have to stay and very carefully protect that intellectual property that has made the product as popular as it is, again, with over 4 million websites using it today.
So spy versus spy, I was going to say cat versus mouse, but it's very much sort of a you're leapfrogging each other every day, or probably hours in some cases for you guys. And that topic of machine learning sort of fed into where I was thinking about, which is AGI is becoming, whether or not you believe in the religion of artificial general intelligence or not, the chances of that happening seems to be becoming stronger and stronger each day. The clusters out there that are being used to build this or to train these models are becoming larger and larger. So it seems to me at some point, reCAPTCHA is not going to be able to do what it's doing. At some point, it's going to be very sort of let's leave that out of it. But it'll be very strong chance that the bots on either side can be very convincing at being not a bot. Are you guys thinking that far ahead? I'm sure you are. Is there anything you can comment around that, or?
So knowing the compute power that we have at our I can fire 1 million cores up with a single click of a mouse and all that. We have some of the most robust infrastructure globally. I spent a good bit of my career working for the U.S. government, and I was like, oh, we have satellites and we have all this other stuff. And I came to Google, and my mind was just blown at the infrastructure we have. So, if anyone can do it, I'm pretty sure we can do it in terms of staying ahead from that. I will touch on a point that you guys have kind of mentioned once or twice here, and that's the whole ML buzzword and the AI buzzword and all that. And having come from the Chronicle side of the house, where I worked on our next gen SIM product, the artist formerly known as Backstory, now Chronicle. One of the things that I guess triggers me is when people talk about AI and ML just blanketly across security. And the reason for that is you have to have a very specific purpose of what you want to use the technology to solve. If static analysis alone would have solved the malware problem, Peter Norton would have shut that down in the mid to late 90s, for us. We've had to evolve because the threat has evolved. Malware went dynamic and polymorphic. Machine learning looks for patterns. How do you look for patterns in something designed to not be invisible? So right now, the best methodology is what we're doing, in our opinion, on the machine learning side, and also tuning that along with the user friction to hopefully kind of like seeing like a burglar walking up to a house and seeing a home security label. We're hoping that somebody sees that reCAPTCHA logo and just goes to another website. In that sense. But machine learning is helping us just make it harder, more difficult. And at some point, you have to realize that unless it's a nation state sponsored attack, this is a for-profit type of malicious attack, if you will, for the most part, with the exception of maybe the good bots. So what we need to do is we need to make it so cost prohibitive that the bot makers just stop doing this. And so right now, our best guess is the combination of that new user friction along with the machine learning models, and that may evolve over time. AI could potentially play a bigger part in that. But as fast as the industry is moving right now, and keeping up with everything, this seems to be a very effective method. We've seen since the launch of reCAPTCHA Enterprise, we've seen just a massive uptick in user experience, and really we're finding that that sweet spot is a lot easier to obtain because we can tune each individual site specific to whether it's an account takeover, a coupon stuffing, a carding attack, scalping. I mean, there's 20 to 30 different use cases that we see the technology being used for. And what we found is mostly everyone just focused on the simple account takeover with the login. But what we're seeing now is that use case is growing further and further. It's password resets, it's account updates, it's shopping cart verifications, it's tracking form submissions. We're seeing it used on human resources websites. Some of the most interesting use cases I've seen, like I said, is one of the packages where that's it. Even the delivery drivers, and everything now seems to be in a 1 hour delivery, whether that's your food being delivered from a restaurant or even a 1 hour delivery on some of the large online retailers and stuff like that. What's happening is these drivers have to go out and bid for these particular routes and stuff. And what we're seeing is bot makers standing up legitimate businesses where they go in and they grab the different bids. And then what they do is they turn around and will resell that to the drivers as well. So it's a really interesting to see the cottage industry evolve as well.
Now, John, obviously a lot of people are used to the old CAPTCHAs, the ability to hire a bunch of people maybe overseas to kind of bypass them. I'm assuming reCAPTCHA Enterprise has addressed some of these issues with some of the challenges of what people would necessarily look at as the old CAPTCHA technology, which is show me, give me all the ones that have cars, and then they outsource all that to India or something like that and add that human element. reCAPTCHA Enterprise addresses some of those issues with kind of the open source and other versions of CAPTCHA that are out there, right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we don't even train our own internal models using public stuff anymore. And the reason for that is we found people are just really bad at solving CAPTCHAs, and so that methodology is just really just it's very case specific and it still has a valid use case. It's just you have to understand what you're trying to solve for. Is it a bowling league website, or is it an e-commerce site, or is it a COVID relief site? and understanding again who is your demographic of your users. Like what are the users that are going to be using primarily this website. One would think that a college admissions website would potentially have a different use case than, say, the Social Security Administration's website or AARP or some other organization. So what we want to do is make sure that as part of this process, the application administrators take into account what threats are being posed to them. Who are my users? Who will ultimately benefit from this? And again, it is not just a black and white thing anymore. We have to set it, and we have to understand what the bigger picture is. And so what you see in a typical deployment is there's the security architects, there's folks from marketing, there's business owners that directly are tied to this. And so it really starts with that initial touch point of going to the website and then building out your workflows from there.
And what about when you're talking about that, because you mentioned like we're talking about ML and like the quality of data, and you're talking about having to customize very much to the sites in particular, but often too, as you were talking about, for example, credential stuffing and coupon stuffing, there may be very different teams on that application side that are responsible for that authentication experience, that the login page versus the shopping page. So what does it look like, or are there particular hurdles or things to keep in mind on the DevOps side of things when they're trying to deploy a tool like this?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we've seen has been that there's so many different silos within an organization that don't even know that another organization within their organization is using the technology. Having a consolidated strategy when it comes to CAPTCHA is really important. So the login team will be different from the e-commerce team versus the couponing team versus we're seeing a lot of online retailers tying in their loyalty program cards to the 2FA, for example. So they need to validate their users. They need to go out and do data quality checks. So marketing is now involved in this because they want to validate that data set as part of the 2FA. That plays into security. And then again, the login team may not be working with the online cart teams. So what I would say is anyone that is looking to embark on a CAPTCHA project, definitely send out an email to within your organization and find out, or even just poke around on your website and see. More often than not, most people don't realize that there's somebody else already doing this within an organization. Also, buying Advil at the airport is really expensive. If you go buy it at one of the large warehouse stores like a Costco or something like that, it's a lot cheaper because you're buying in bulk. So CAPTCHA is no longer free, and so what you need to do is you need to kind of consolidate that so you can get a more coverage and get it at a bulk rate as well too.
Yeah, and I know we've been talking about reCAPTCHA and bots and account takeover, and with all the battle of the bots, no one has yet mentioned made a Terminator or Skynet reference. So I will make instead a Tron reference in Fighting for the User as one of my more favorite pop culture references. But we haven't really talked about web risk too much, and I think that's one of the other things that is one of the major product areas you're looking at that also benefits from the massive amount of, call it, data or just visibility that your team has. So tell us real quick, as we're getting to the end here, what does web risk look like, and how is that, what threats is that addressing? How is that protecting users?
So web risk is the enterprise version of the Google Safe Browsing API, and the two work basically hand in hand. So the Safe Browsing API was an initiative that Google started in the mid 2000s, where basically, all intents and purposes, was a not-for-profit threat intelligence platform. Obviously, we see a lot of the internet traffic, that happens with our 9 billion user a month products that we have out there. So we see a lot of good and we see a lot of bad, and we all that. And so every time you click a fish, like if you click on a Gmail account, you say spam or phishing and things like that. That goes into a database. And so what that ultimately will allow us to do is that will allow us to go in and take a look at that. And so what we've done is we've amassed this amazing collection of data, if you will, and of good and bad websites. And so what web risk basically does is it makes that available in 4 different flavors to our users. You can do a straight lookup and see if this is considered a malicious website from a spam or from spyware or anything like that. We have various categories on the different platform, and so that's now available for commercial reasons. And a good use case of that could be you could do an integration with a web proxy and take a look and check that as well if you want. But really, what we're seeing is from a retail perspective, we're seeing it for content analysis. So if you have a review site or a website where you're actually letting users to post reviews and things like that, what we're finding is a lot of times a lot of phishing attacks will occur by users pasting in URLs and saying, "Hey, for a free coupon code, click here." Well, what WebRisk allows us to do is in a very secure and private manner, allow you to take that URL, check it against our database, which is quite robust, and then make a determination whether it's on that list or not. Depending on the version of the API that you're using, you can also conduct an on-demand assessment of that URL. So a lot of times when you go to one of the threat intel feed lists, you don't know how recent that data has been analyzed. We now have the ability to invoke an automated assessment of that. My favorite feature of WebRisk, though, is the submission API. The submission API allows you to submit via an API to us a URL that you've deemed malicious. Now, let's say I'm working in a SOC and there's a massive spear phishing attack going across my organization. What I have to do, and it's been reported to me, I can take that URL, submit it to the submission API. And what the submission API will do is it will validate that API or that URL is malicious. And in less than 1 hour, it will add it to the Google Safe Browsing API. And so what that'll effectively do is pop up either a warning and or block access to that website, depending on your browser configuration, on over 4 billion devices globally. So that's anything covered by the Safe Browsing API, which is going to be your Android, your Gmail, your Chrome, and numerous other third-party tools that leverage the public version of the Safe Browsing API. So imagine a world where you don't have to go in and contact legal, have a cease and desist letter, contact the authorities and all that, and in less than 1 hour, you have the ability to effectively neuter a phishing attack. That's what we're bringing with our new submission API as part of the WebRisk platform. So it's very exciting, and we're seeing now that the reCAPTCHA is literally the tip of the spear when it comes to the application security side, and we're starting to drill into the content. Then you take that, and your further analysis can be done with one of our sister companies at Google, VirusTotal, and then you can ultimately take that and pass it on to the SIEM. So what you're seeing is an entire end-to-end security solution that the Google Cloud Security team has been helping to refine and bring to market as in a cloud agnostic manner. You can run this technology either on GCP, you can run it on AWS, you can run it on Azure. It really, we're the company behind, major supporter of Kubernetes. So one of the biggest things for us is making sure we have that open standard where we can support security across the different cloud providers, because we think security is something that really should not have necessarily those boundaries when it comes to compatibility and stuff. So it's a very telling story when you sit there and put the pieces together. Really excited to work on it.
Definitely building it to do another reference is this is the Rostrom's universal robots. You're building universal application security across cloud. So that's great to hear. And I think, John, we talked a little bit before this episode just about the history of reCAPTCHA. And as we wrap up here, you had made the point that, reCAPTCHA, the idea goes back to, Alan Turing talking about this in 1950. So rather than put you on the spot and predict what 70 years from now, these will look like, what are a couple of things that listeners should look forward to over the next couple of months from either on the WebRisk or the reCAPTCHA front?
I would say definitely stay tuned. We went with reCAPTCHA, especially. We went to a quarterly release cycle, and thanks to the fact that we've been a little more focused on and stay at home versus going on the road and talking to everybody about the new launch. We're actually ahead of schedule on our product release roadmap. So we've released some really new, awesome new features in the products already. Native integrations within the capabilities. The other thing too is we've also bridged the gap to actually provide full mobile SDKs for both Android and iOS. Back to your ClickFarms story and all that stuff, we now have the ability to not just do iframes and other things like that, but we can take it down to the application level within the mobile space. So what we're finding, especially in different areas, is that sometimes mobile is 60% of all traffic is mobile related. So we're continuously looking at where where the fraud's coming in, and how are they or how are the bots getting past it. And mobile seem to be a really big part, especially with as cheap as a lot of these mobile devices are. So staying ahead of the curve and getting the tech out there. Definitely reach out to the reCAPTCHA team for a demo. We have both our public roadmap and then our NDA based roadmap for our prospects and for our customers. I'm really excited about some of the stuff, and hopefully, with everything going on in the world, we can go back to a point where we can all congregate again. Once the first responders and folks on the front lines of the COVID thing have really been able to bring us some normalcy back to life, and we can kind of meet and rejoice about this. But if not, we're going to do our virtual shows, so stay tuned for blog updates and things like that on where we're going to be doing our product announcements and launches. We've got quite a bit in store. We've come a long ways from Alan Turing's assessment in 1950, and I think in the next 5 years we'll come even further than we have in the last 70. So stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you, John, and we'll be excited to watch that. We'll have to have you back on in another couple months to see what's been new. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thanks. And if you do want to learn more about Google Cloud, you can also visit securityweekly.com/reCAPTCHA. And we're going to take a quick break now, and we'll return with our next segment.